Great, it's a great question. So this question, I'll repeat the question: how should we structure our limud to make it realistic, meaningful, constant, and evolve at the same time? So this goes back to kind of what I talk about ad nauseum when I talk about learning, and that is, as the Hachamim say, Le'olam yu divrei Torah biyadecha kelalim. Always, the words of Torah should be in your hands as principles, right? Kelalim, principles. What that means is that the nature of Torah study should fundamentally focus on concepts, on principles, on frameworks of thought structure, right? So whether that's the principles of halakha, or the principles of nibu'ah, or the principles of avodah, of tefillah, so on and so forth. First, always start with the principles, right? Even the principles of belief in God, there are principles to it, yeah? The learning should always look towards principles. Why? Because if you are learning in terms of principles, right? Well, then it's certainly meaningful because the principles give context to everything. And as I've said many times in so many of my shiurim, I mean, these are one of the cardinal points I think that I put out all the time, is that meaning lies in context. Yeah, you can always isolate a detail, and by isolating a detail, you will always isolate it from its meaning. It's the context that provides meaning. So the principle in this sense, in terms of conceptualization, is the contextual treatment of whatever detailed information fills in the principles or fits into the principled domain, right? The principled domain. So it's meaningful because it provides you the meaning, right? It gives you the framework for how it is that you should think and what these things, what color these things take on. It's constant because the principles, by their nature, usually stand the test of time because they are not detailed enough that they are easily shaken, right? But they are formed enough that they can be recognized and applied in various ways to the developments and changes of time. So it's another thing that we do in order to be able to allow for constancy, and therefore allows for evolution of ideas. Because if I'm taking the concepts and I'm looking at the world through new eyes with the consciousness of the concept, then I'm always able to respond and replenish and innovate, right, in my approach, while still remaining faithful to the ideas, right, in their core elements themselves, which is on a certain level very much the nature of Torah Shebechtav and Torah Sheba'al Peh, right? The Torah Shebechtav itself is a series of principles. Right? No mitzvah in and of on its own is practical, right? Is practically executable, right? How am I supposed to do any of them without asking more questions, right? And understanding the specific applications of the ideas, right? Every single one of them mitzvot are essentially a principle. And that's what the Torah Shebechtav, that's why Torah Shebechtav is essentially unchanging. It's there, it's not to be tampered with. The words have to be kept intact no matter how, in every single generation. But the question of how it is that I understand these words, I mean, I was just talking to my dear colleague, Rabbi Dr. Rafi Zarum, the other day, and we were sharing with each other the fact that we heard from Rabbi Sachs, both each of us, that he was saying, when he got older, he read the Chumash, he read the Torah, the Parasha, and he saw things just as a result of being older that he didn't see when he was younger, because he didn't have the same eyes at 50 or 60 that he did when he was 20 or 30, right? So these can obviously be applied in so many different scenarios, but the concept, I hope, the principle, right, that I'm teaching is there. And I think, therefore, it makes it realistic, because it always gives you an opportunity to be able to deal with what's really happening in the world. Right? And you're not afraid. That's one of the reasons, by the way. It's precisely one of the main reasons why I started my podcast, Humans Being, which I'm incidentally recording the second season of. I'm in the middle of recording the second season. I just recorded, thanks to Matthew Miller, another member of our Chabura. I just had a phenomenal discussion with Professor Hod Lipman about AI and robotics and things like that. So, I mean, yes, you can approach these things from a place of Torah as well if you have the principles. The whole point of the podcast is to be able to show that the principles of Torah can be applied to whatever it is that's going on out there in the world. So yes, realistic, meaningful, constant, and evolve. Le'olam yu divrei Torah biyadicha kelalim.